Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do a Friday Reads video where I wrap up the week in reading and talk about any exciting bookish things going on. We'll get to the Friday Reads portion a little bit later. If you want to jump to it, there will be a timestamp down below. Just a PSA from a confusion that happened last week. If you see a title mentioned in the description box down below, because I will have a list of the titles that I talk about in this video and links to them on bookshop.org. If you see it down there, it's not necessarily something that I talk about in the Friday Reads section. It might be something I talk about in the build-up to the Friday Reads. Just a PSA, because that did cause confusion for somebody last week. Anyway, there hasn't been a whole lot to talk about this week. It's been a little bit quiet. It's been a week. And to be honest, I haven't finished a book, but I'm well on my way to finishing 2 different books, and we'll talk about that. The big thing is that the Women's Prize is coming next week, and in addition to that, I have sweaters to show you. So in my May wrap-up, we spent a lot of time talking about the vacation, Joel and I, and thank you for all of the kind comments. I'm glad everybody is so excited to have Joel in videos because I love sitting down and talking with him. Now, we had mentioned that we got sweaters and they were being shipped. Well, today they arrived. Actually, they arrived 2 days ago, but Joel was traveling for work and he only just got home today. And I waited with bated breath to open the package until he was home. And by the way, because he just got home, Teddy is glued to his side as they wrap up Joel's workday and all of that stuff. So he had no interest in being here for a video. In fact, because Joel was traveling this week, Teddy was like glued to my side all week. He has like a low-level anxiety, which is understandable. He comes by it honestly. He was abandoned less than a year ago. And today, he seems to have worked past that. He actually kind of left, went outside on his own, and was chasing squirrels and enjoying life, and that was really good to see. So, you know, shout out to anybody who is a caretaker for other people or helps other people manage their anxiety, because it can feel like a full-time job. He's honestly helping me with my anxiety, so I shouldn't pretend that it's not a two-way street. It definitely is. Anyway, the sweaters and all of the fun stuff that we got from the Aaron Sweater Market. First is a hat. Joel really wanted one of these in charcoal, and I had loved the kind of oatmeal color because it's not just like a bland oatmeal color that you would usually see in the United States. There are flecks of blue and this really bold kind of tan color that's almost coppery. I don't know if you can really see it in the light. But so anyway, Joel really wanted a hat and wanted to get one for me as well. So there's that. The problem is it's so warm where I live today that I can't wear any of these right now. So it's going to be a while before I can actually wear them, but I'm just really glad to have them. Joel and I had both gotten shirts, and it's going to need to be ironed before I wear it. But here is a little sneak peek of the shirt. It has, you know, it's called a traditional grandfather shirt, which is what it says on the label, which feels a little weird. It's like, oh, I'm buying a grandfather shirt. But when we laughed about that, the salesman who was helping us said, it's funny that it sounds weird to you because it's just what I know the shirts as. So anyway, this will need to be ironed, but I'm really looking forward to this. Joel got one with a similar sort of pattern with the buttons. So that is another thing. Now let's get to the actual sweaters. I went a little bit traditional with mine. And I didn't realize it until they came, but I got 2 variations on blue. So this is like a V-neck. I don't know if you can see. The pattern doesn't show well in photos, but I really wanted one that had all of the patterning on it. And it actually comes with a guide to tell you what the patterns mean, because they mean something. And I haven't spent the time to even really like look and try to figure out which patterns I have in this. And again, I think what really shows the craftsmanship of it is that this isn't just a solid blue. It's kind of like a navy blue with a little bit of gray and some flecks of green in it. So really looking forward to that. It's just too hot to wear it right now. And then I had really wanted to get a cardigan, and I talked about that. But I ended up getting seduced by this instead. And again, this is mostly blue, but it also has a lot of green tones in it. And I love the buttons. So there's my sweater haul from the Aran Islands and the Aran Sweater Market. They do sell stuff online. So, you know, if you're ever interested, you can feel free to, oh God, disaster. You can feel free to check out their website and maybe for Christmas, think about that for someone in your life, or the holidays, whatever holiday you do celebrate, or birthdays. Those are always fun too. Anyway, the other big thing going on is that next week they will be announcing the Women's Prize on June 13th. So I'm hoping that I will be able to film a reaction video on that day and post it. It all is going to depend, because the difference in time, it happens in the evening over in the UK, and we'll see. I'm hoping I will be able to film it on Thursday and get it edited and posted, but we'll see, because they're announcing both nonfiction and fiction. So I fully anticipate that Soldier Sailor by Claire Kilroy or Enter Ghost by Isabella Hamad will win the Women's Prize for Fiction this year. I do think there is a case to be made for Brotherless Night by Vivi Ganeshananthan, but I really think it's going to be either Soldier Sailor or Enter Ghost. I haven't seen too many predictions, but it seems like that really is where the field is narrowing. I've seen like Roro Reads talked about, I think those were his top books. I believe they were Ben Reedsgood's tops of the Women's Prize field as well. Obviously there's also The Wren by Anne Enright and Restless Dolly Maunder by Kate Grenville. I am going to be shocked if Restless Dolly Maunder wins, and I will be disappointed. That's the only one from the shortlist that I have read, and I thought it was just fine. Just fine. And the final shortlisted book for the Women's Prize for Fiction is River East, River West by Aubrey Lescure. And there's room for that to come in and surprise everyone, but I really think it's come down to Soldier Sailor, Enter Ghost, or Brotherless Night, and any one of them could win. Brotherless Night already won the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction, and even leaving that out, I do feel like it's going to be either Soldier Sailor or Enter Ghost. If you told me you have to pick one, I would say Enter Ghost, because it seems like people are really responding to the novel, so the quality of it seems to be really good, but also politically, it feels like an urgent book to, urgent to reward right now. So we'll see what happens. If you have predictions for what is going to win, I would love to hear in the comment section down below. And then on the nonfiction side, I really don't know where to go for a winner. The only book that I feel like I would be surprised is Thunderclap, although I have gotten some really good feedback on all of the others, that one in particular, all of them really. So really there's room for any of them to win, but I feel like it's going to be Doppelganger by Naomi Klein, or How to Say Babylon by Safia Sinclair, or All That She Carried by Tia Miles. I feel like, again, it's coming down to 3 books on the list. And then the final one being Code Dependent by Madhumita Murgia. There's also A Flat Place by Noreen Masood, and I have heard good things about that one. But I really think it's going to be either All That She Carried, How to Say Babylon, or Doppelganger. And I'm going to give an edge to Doppelganger. Like, if you told me you have to pick one, go Doppelganger. But we'll see. And again, if you have thoughts about what's going to win the nonfiction prize, let me know that in the comment section down below. Let's get into the actual Friday Reads portion of the video. This is probably actually going to be one of those rare short Friday Reads videos that I always say, like, this is going to be a short video, and then it ends up being 25 to 30 minutes long, just because I like to talk. But this might actually be a short one, and part of that is because I've done some long videos recently, although my reaction to the New York Times' best books of 2024 so far was actually shorter. So there's that. But, anyway, I don't feel like I need to pay attention to how long my videos are. I feel like if somebody wants to skip to different parts of the video or skip a video entirely, they're always free to do that. But I feel like I would like to have a shorter video. Actually, before we get to the Friday Reads portion of the video, there is one thing, not a whole lot of people, but a portion of people had responded to my Pulitzer Prize video about Night Watch, expressing disappointment that I had negative things to say about the book. And I feel a little confused by that, because I feel like I'm allowed to have negative opinions about a book, but people seem to think that they come here for positivity, and that's fine. I love that. I love spreading positivity, but I'm also allowed not to like something and to express that. So if you were offended that I really didn't like Night Watch, if I really don't like a book, I feel like I need to be honest about that. It would be irresponsible for me not to share negative opinions of a book that I read. What am I going to do? Pretend that I liked it just for the sake of formality? So Anyway, we don't have to get into it. And like I said, most of the reactions were positive, or at least felt like they were building a conversation, even if they liked the book, we're sort of building a conversation off of that. But because there were some people who felt disappointed that I had a negative opinion about something, I just wanted to throw that out there. It's like, it's going to happen. I'm not going to like everything that I read. So there you go. Let's get to the Friday Reads portion of the video. So I had mentioned last week that I had started Tin Man on audio, and I was really liking it, and I hadn't decided if I wanted to pivot to the print book. Well, I decided to pivot to the print book, which is so pretty, by the way. Sarah Winman actually reads the audio, and she does a really great job. But I feel like I was loving the language enough that I really wanted to pivot to the print book so I could kind of spend time with the words. And what's interesting is sometimes I like to read aloud to myself if no one else is around. And it made me appreciate her work on the audio even more, because the way this is written, which is beautiful, I'm not complaining about the way it's written, it can be a little bit difficult to read when there's a lot of dialogue, and it really made me appreciate her skill as someone who narrates her own work. But I'm kind of glad that I pivoted. I do almost wonder if I finish this in time, because I don't have a lot of time left with my loan of the audiobook. I might even go back and finish the audiobook, but I am kind of glad that I have been giving myself the leeway to focus on the print book. I was in really good shape to have it finished before I filmed this Friday Reads video, and then yesterday, as I'm filming this, I just didn't get a lot of reading done. It was kind of an anxiety day. They happen. So I didn't get a lot done, and it is what it is. And for that reason, instead of being done with this book, by the time I checked in with you, I have like 70 pages left, and I'm really liking it. What's interesting as well is that I feel like the way people describe this book, and the way it is even described on the back, doesn't quite do the story justice, but what you find when you take this dive into the book is quite beautiful and very resonant. So what it says on the back of the book is, this is almost a love story, but it's not as simple as that. Ellis and Michael are 12-year-old boys when they first become friends, and for a long time it is just the two of them, cycling the streets of Oxford, teaching themselves how to swim, discovering poetry, and dodging the fists of overbearing fathers. And then one day, this closest of friendships grows into something more. Many years later, Ellis is married to Annie, and Michael is nowhere in sight, which leads to the question, what happened in the years in between? So I guess that sort of set up an expectation in me that this would be a book that has two different time periods. One in the past, where Ellis and Michael are young and very close friends, and that turns into something more. And then another one in the present, or some later date, where Ellis is married to Annie and Michael is gone. And that's not quite the way this book works. Like, actually, it opens with a scene in 1950, and then it's just sort of like a prologue to the book. And then you have Ellis with a really beautiful sunflower, and then it says 1996. I feel like you could just take the year out, because to me that says this is a part of the story that is set in 1996, and it is to a large degree. However, for this very long segment of the book that follows, like about 107 pages, it's not just 1996. It's actually moving back and forth. It takes place almost as much in the 1950s and the 1960s and the 1970s and a little bit into the 1980s as it does in 1996, because you have Ellis in 1996. He is, I think, 45 or about to turn 45 at that point. And he is alone, which is another thing that this sets up a sort of false expectation. Like, you meet him and he's alone. And I won't necessarily go into why, because again, I don't think it's a spoiler, because he introduces himself very quickly as this person who is alone. But because this sets up an expectation, I won't talk about why he's alone. But anyway, and then he starts reflecting on his life and remembers his childhood and when he met Michael. But none of this is really happening chronologically. It's sort of happening out of order as his memory flashes him back. So for it to be labeled 1996, and for this to kind of imply that you only have two time periods that are important, is not necessarily what the book is. It's actually very fluidly moving back and forth between Ellis's childhood and his adolescence and his 20s, and now him in his 40s. And it does it in this really beautiful way. It just, I feel that this description doesn't necessarily equate to what you find when you pick up the book, if that makes any sense. And I don't want to go too far into that because I don't want to get into spoilers. Again, and the only reason I'm worried about that is because this sets up a sort of expectation, and then what you find in the book is a bit different. And sometimes that can be hard to reconcile if what you find is not as interesting as what you thought you were going to be finding. And actually, in this case, I was really intrigued by the premise as laid out on the back of the book, but what I have found in the book is actually a lot more complex and layered. And there's a very pervasive sadness and loneliness in this book that is incredibly interesting and beautiful. And Sarah Winman is a great writer and really gets that across very well. And there are great descriptions. And again, I don't know what to tell you to do because her reading of the audio seemed fantastic. But I have also really loved spending time with the words on the pages as well. And I feel like I kind of want to go back to the audio. And actually, now that I think about it, the audio was readily available on Libby when I looked for it. That's part of why I decided to jump into this to launch my Pride reading. So maybe when I'm done, I want to read some other print books and listen to some other audiobooks, but maybe sometime soon I'm going to circle back to it and listen to it again, because I feel like this is sort of a Toni Morrison situation. Toni Morrison reads a lot of her own audiobooks, and she has such a great voice. But in Toni Morrison's case especially, I feel like you need to spend time with the words on the page, or at least I do. I don't want to make judgments on it, how anybody else reads or absorbs information. So I feel like I'm going to circle back to a lot of Toni Morrison's books on audio, and I think that's what I will do with this as well. Beautiful, aching book, and maybe not a good book to read when you're having a bit of an anxious week, but it is absolutely beautiful, stunning, and I'm really glad that I am finally getting around to reading Tin Man by Sarah Winman. And I've heard a lot of really great things about Still Life, which is another book published within the last few years by Sarah Winman, so I'll have to jump to that at some point soon as well. But really glad that I am finally getting around to Tin Man. And you can see we're already at 17 and a half minutes. So I don't do well when it comes to short videos. It's just the way I am. So when I pivoted to the print book of Tin Man, Joel was actually just leaving on his trip for work, and we had decided that he would start the audio of Guncle Abroad, which I'll talk about in a moment. And while he was doing that, I picked up the audio of Radiant, The Life and Line of Keith Haring by Brad Gooch. It occurred to me after I got back from Ireland and Scotland that somehow I had accidentally left this off of my pile of possibilities for Pride Month, which will be linked in the description box down below. And it is a book that I really wanted to read, so I started listening to it on audio. I am about 45% into the audio right now, and I have found this to be really interesting. I'm a big fan of the art of Keith Haring. You can see this example of the art behind him on the cover. Odds are you have seen Keith Haring's art, even if you didn't know that Keith Haring is the artist behind it. There are really great photographs in the book as well. I am looking for more examples of his art that I can show you. It's really interesting. Like, this is one of his early pieces that was described recently in the book. And he was known for subway chalk art, and they actually have an example of that here. He is mostly known for images like this one. If you've only seen one piece of Keith Haring art, this is probably it. But there are all kinds of examples. I love the art. I used to have a phone case that had Keith Haring art on it. We actually have 2 rugs in the house that have Keith Haring's art on it. So you can tell I'm a fan. So it's been interesting to get to know him because I didn't actually know all that much about him as a person or as an artist. And what I really like about this book, which is a brick of a book, is that it allows him to be a very complicated person. And what I like about this memoir is that I feel like a lot of the time when a life is settled, because Keith Haring has been gone for a long time. He died of AIDS in 1990 or 1991, somewhere thereabout. And when there is that much history, like a life is, so the circle is closed and you can look back at it, it's really easy to write a memoir about a person and make everything that happens to them seem inevitable. And when you talk about Keith Haring's childhood, you sort of see ways in which his life could have gone in a lot of different directions. And even when he goes to art school, he ends up, initially at least, going to a professional art school. Like, it will teach you how to be a professional artist for consumer things like advertising and things like that. That was his first art school experience. And it also interrogates, I'm kind of getting away from my point, but allow me to take a little detour. It also sort of interrogates the sort of mythos of himself that he creates in his life, especially in his later years. And it's weird to talk about him as if he had a full life. He died in his 30s, I believe. But anyway, he mentions that he had always wanted to be an artist, and a woman he was dating at the time kind of gently points out, it's like, well, he never said anything about it to me. Maybe he had it in the back of his mind, but like the classes that he was taking very much, and the way he would talk about his classes really point to the idea that he was taking the idea of being like a professional consumer artist seriously. And again, maybe he had other aspirations conflicting with them at the same time, but it sort of just punctures the hole in this idea that there was only one way his life could have gone. And I find that to be fascinating, because if you look at your own life, odds are it's the same sort of thing. There are a lot of directions you could have gone, and you ended up where you are. And if you made a different choice at any point along the way, things might be a little bit similar, but odds are they would be very different. And this book sort of interrogates how he got to the place, and also how a lot of his initial interests ended up building into things that were happening in the underground art scene in New York. Like, he actually, as an artist, when he was in art school, loved spontaneous things like drawing on things. One of the early things that he did is he would take Post-it notes, which were brand new at the time, and he would make drawings on them, and he would just leave them all over the school. And then he would sort of watch, because he wanted people to take them. And he loved the idea of this sort of portable art in spaces where people could access it and see it for themselves. And when he got to New York, there was a graffiti scene happening in the underground art movement. And the way he had been doing his art sort of naturally tied into that. So what I like about this book is that it doesn't treat Keith Haring's life as an inevitability. Like, he was born and he always wanted to do this specific thing, and he just moved in that direction. It kind of shows how he grew and developed over time, even to the point where he just finds a book about art and reads it, and it ends up changing his life and what he wants to do. And I just find that really fascinating. And it allows him to be a complicated person. It talks about him being sort of narcissistic and stuck up, but also kind, and helping lift up other artists. And I've really appreciated that about this book. So I'm looking forward to finishing this and getting into the rest of my Pride reading. It's been good spending time with this book and really getting to know him. And it's interesting as well, because there's a wealth of material, even in a time before social media. You have journal entries and things and people who are still around, that it feels like a very different sort of biography. And I have really been enjoying that. And again, it is a brick of a book, but I have found it really interesting. So if you have any interest in Keith Haring, or just biographies in general, or are looking for a nonfiction book that is Pride related for Pride Month reading, I really think, despite its size, this is a fascinating way of doing a memoir. So what do I have coming up? I already mentioned it. The Guncle Abroad. Now, I did misfire in my plans a little bit, because I ended up choosing a very long book to do on audio, and Joel finished the audio of The Guncle Abroad almost immediately. Like, within 2 days, he was done. So now I'm waiting until I finish this before I do the audio, because I think I'd want to do this on audio. Stephen Rowley reads the audio himself, and that's how I listened to The Guncle. And I kind of want to do it again, even though I have this physical copy of the book. So this will be my next audio book. And once I finish Radiant, I'm not going to try to hurry myself through Radiant, but I am really itching to pick up The Guncle Abroad. And like I said, I just had an anxiety week, and, got to be honest. So I feel like I need to pivot away from heavy, serious books. Both, by the way, deal with AIDS. So I need something a little lighter and a bit more cinnamon bun as well. And then when I'm done with Tin Man, I already have a book from the library, Tongues by Thomas Grattan, and I want to read that very quickly. I didn't put it on my pile of possibilities for Pride Month because at the time my library didn't have it, but when I got back from Ireland and Scotland, they had clearly purchased a copy. So I put a hold on it and it came. It's here. But the one I'm going to do before that is one that I have not picked up from the library yet. I got a notice that my hold was available yesterday afternoon, and I haven't been able to pop over to the library to pick it up. It's Cinema Love by Jiamin Tang. This is a book that I had included in my list of upcoming books for 2024 that I was really excited about. I'll link that video down below. I also threw it on my pile of possibilities for Pride Month because I had a hold of it that was coming up. It actually came up when I was in Ireland or just about to leave for Ireland and couldn't pick it up. So I ended up just not picking it up and getting back on the hold list, and here it is. So I will be reading that next. And somebody had mentioned that at their libraries, you can kind of put a pause on your hold and I guess let somebody else get it. My library doesn't seem to do that. Maybe I need to talk to a librarian, but I don't see any way of doing it on the library website. So maybe there is a way I can do it. But anyway, that's a whole separate thing. So Cinema Love is something I'm really excited to read. It was kind of burning a hole in my soul because I really wanted to get a copy of it while we were in Ireland and Scotland. It had just been released and I saw copies of it all over. It has a different cover over there and both are actually beautiful. I'll put the other cover up here as well. Both the US and the UK covers, I think, are just gorgeous and stunning. So I really wanted to pick it up, but I knew that it was available back in the US and that my library had a copy. So I held off and picked up other things. And if you want to know what I picked up, you can check out my book haul, which will be linked down below. So Cinema Love is up next in print. The Guncle Abroad is up next in audio. But I need to finish these first. I think once I sit down and really spend time with Tin Man, it should be really easy to finish. So this should be done and I should be able to move to Cinema Love fairly easily. I still have a ways to go. Like I said, I'm about 45% of the way through the audio and this is a big book. So I think that equates to like 7 hours, maybe 8 hours at 1.2 speed because I don't like to go any faster than 1.2. So anyway, that's what I've been up to this week and what I've been reading and all of that stuff. I'd love to hear what you've been up to and what you've been reading and what you think is going to win the Women's Prize for Nonfiction and Fiction. Let me know all of that in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time. Look at this. I'm again almost at 30 minutes. I can't do it. I can't make a short video. Oh well, but I appreciate your time and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.